everyone, and thank you very much for attending today's session. In today's session, we will talk about Microsoft Fabric cost management for Capacity when it is under pay-as-you-go. Without any further ado, introduce myself. I am Sohail Bakhshi. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP and a director, author, blogger, speaker, and consultant, mostly active in Microsoft Fabric and Power BI and data warehousing and everything in between. So I'm not going to say that I'm a Azure expert or a Logic Apps expert. I'm not going to even pretend that I'm one, but I found some solutions in Microsoft Logic Apps which are pretty helpful, and I've implemented those solutions in numerous occasions. So let's dive in. The agenda for today is to enter a little bit of introduction to Microsoft Fabric and what it is all about, and then Microsoft Fabric pricing model, and we will also talk about Microsoft Fabric cost management for pay-as-you-go option. And we will look at 3 different approaches, and all of them are in Logic Apps, to how to use Azure Portal to pause and resume our Fabric capacity, and then how to automate the entire pause and resume in Logic Apps so that it works in a certain time frames, right? So let's say that I want my capacity to run 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on weekdays only. I don't want it to be to run overnight or during the weekends, to manage a little bit of cost. And then we also look at automating scaling of the capacity with Logic Apps, which will be something like if I need more horsepower in certain time frames during the weekdays, let's say from 10 to 12 a.m., then I upscale my capacity to a larger capacity. Let's say if I have a P2, I go for a P8 for 2 hours, and I downscale it afterwards. There are obviously some intricacies involved. So something like if I have really large data models, or there are some notebooks that are running in the background, it might be a little bit trickier for the last one, but hey, we are just scratching the surface and looking at options and possibilities. So, introduction to Microsoft Fabric. I suppose many of you that who are in this call already familiar with Power BI, but Microsoft introduced a more comprehensive and much larger data platform, which integrates various data management and analytics services on a SaaS foundation. So it is a software as a service. And if you're coming from, which many of you, I suppose, are coming from Azure background, you perhaps have done some Data Factory stuff. If you are in Azure Data Platform, you have done some Synapse analytics stuff, and streaming and data warehousing. One of the arts of Microsoft Fabric is that it encapsulates everything into a file layer, which is called OneLake. And OneLake, you can think of OneLake like a OneDrive, but for your data, right? So we'll only have one copy of our data along the way. So let's say I move some of the data from the data sources with Data Factory pipelines, and I landed into my bronze layer, and then I take some data engineering steps, and I make my silver and gold layers and land the data into a data warehouse. All of these different layers, they are all working on same, just one copy of the file, which is the file type is Parquet files. That is pretty much it about Microsoft Fabric. And Microsoft Fabric adds more and more stuff to it. Something like Data Activator wasn't a thing. You can do some sort of triggering some metrics when it passes a certain level, and we can do that in Data Activator. And obviously, Power BI is now a part of Microsoft Fabric. So Microsoft Fabric is built upon the Power BI service. So if you're coming from a Power BI background, you will feel home when you start working with Microsoft Fabric. And next is the different pricing models for Microsoft Fabric Capacities. There are currently two options. One is pay as you go, which is flexible and no long-term commitments and charges based on actual usage. The other one is reservation, right? Which is we have to commit to a certain period, and it is a fixed on a fixed period, but the discount is huge, right? So let me just play this video that I took. So I change the region, if you can see it on the screen that I'm running it, and I change it from Australia to Southeast Asia, and you can see that the numbers has changed, but we get almost 41% discount on when we go with reservation. But here's the thing, with reservation, we do not have any controls over the capacity. We cannot pause the capacity. We obviously can upscale and downscale, but it is not something that we can do by a click or automated in Azure Logic Apps. For that specific reason, today's session is around the pay-as-you-go option, and we will start looking at it in a minute. Okay, so next is we can use the first option, which is not automated at all. We do not automate anything. We just go to Azure Portal by using portal.azure.com, and we get to our capacity. And this is my Capacity Fabric O2 test, and I can pause it. The capacity, I can pause the capacity whenever I want, and I can resume it afterwards. But this is pretty much a manual process, which no one likes, and it doesn't really make sense. The next option would be automating pause and resume, and this is actually the solution that I'm going to show you today. It takes much longer than 25 minutes or 30 minutes to implement these solutions. So I can just show and tell. It is sort of demo, but we cannot implement it together, right? So I'll walk you through the different steps and how it works. And obviously, the last one would be automating the scaling, upscaling, and downscaling. And this specific Logic app is just looking at a certain time frame and upscales and downscales afterwards. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take your questions now, because I have to switch my screen to another screen. Let me show you. This is the capacity that I'm going to pause and resume, or just automate the entire thing. So it is paused now. As you can see, the status is paused. So I can just click on this resume button to resume it, but that's not what we want. So let me go back to my Azure portal. And by the way, this is the pricing that we were talking about. And one more thing, let's see how much saving we are really talking about here. So Fabric Capacities will get charged on an hourly basis, and so it would be 18 cents US dollar cents per hour, right? So if I am on an F2 capacity, the equation would be 0.18 times 2, which is my F2, and times 730 hours, right? So let's just have a look at that. And let's say if I do not want to run it on during the day, 24 hours a day. Let's say I just want to run it on 8 hours, right? So it would be 8 hours times 5 days a week, and let's say we have 4 weeks, right? And then that would be times 0.18 cents. So it would be $28. So the number can vary. It would be, the cost saving would be really a lot of cost saving. So and for that reason, it makes sense for the reservation to get 41% off the pay as you go, because if you are in a business that you really need to run your capacity 24/7, right, then perhaps a reservation would be a much better option, right? And you don't, in that case, you don't really need to be worried about all of these, automations, something like pausing and resuming capacity, or upscaling and downscaling, and all of the intricacies applied. Okay, so with that, let's begin. I go back to my Azure portal and I navigate to my Logic apps. So the first Logic app is the most simplistic one, which I've just added. Let me see why this one is not running. There you go. I'll go to edit mode. What I need here is just a recurrence. Well, and I wanted to run every hour for Auckland and Wellington, and that is the start date that start date and time that I've put in. The other one, which is actually doing the job, is this one, right? Which is an invoke resource operation. What we do, we just add that in, and after the recurrence. So this part is running every hour, and on every hour it looks at my subscription, and then on the resource group, this is the part. This is the resource provider that we need to add, which is Microsoft Fabric. Short resource ID would be, this is a string that we have to type in. This is capacities slash, and after slash we put our capacity name. Remember, that was my capacity name, Fabric O2 test. And this client API version is also important. If we do not fill it correctly, it wouldn't work. And then the action that we want this specific handle would be suspend or resume. We have two options, right? Suspend or resume. Right at the second, my capacity is paused already, right? So let's resume it and see if it works, right? So I put in resume. I just collapse this, save, and I run it. And let me open up another page over here to move to my Fabric capacity and see what is happening. And if I go back on Logic Apps and I just refresh, that ran successfully. So I would expect my Fabric capacity to start it. Look, it is now active, right? So the status is active, and I can pause it from here. Or the other option is to go back to my Logic Apps and just change the action to pause, right? So let's do it. Pause. And I save, and I rerun my Logic Apps workflow. I go back to the workflow. I just refresh to see what is happening over here. It failed for some reason, and this is still active. It is doing something. Let me see. And sometimes I have to just refresh the entire page, and it failed again. It's okay. So it's a live demo anyway. But my capacity is now running. I just pause the capacity to go to the next solution, right? And the next solution is a little bit more sophisticated one, which is suspending Fabric capacity based on a time frame. Let me go to the development mode. And okay, so I still need this workflow to run every hour for Auckland and Wellington, but I need to convert the time to get the New Zealand date and time. And on the and in here in this step, I'm running a different resource. Look, I'm running a read a resource, right? And there is no actions here. I just want to get the status of my capacity. I want this workflow to run only if my capacity is running and only if it is on a certain time frame, right? On a recurrence, if I go to the settings, you can, I don't know if you can see it or if it is too small. I just zoomed in, right? So with this expression, I can identify the workday, right? So from Monday to Friday, right? It will only run from Monday to Friday, and it looks at the next step. I will look at the capacity status, right? And on this capacity status, I will go ahead, and if the converted date and time is successful, I go to the next one, which would be a condition. If it is between 8 to 12, and if this is the interesting part, if my property status, I don't know if you can see it, let me zoom in. If the properties dot state, that is my capacity, the status of my capacity. I'm checking the status of the capacity right here. So if it is paused, then do what? If it is paused, then now I use the invoke resource operation, and I put in resume, right? So I would expect it to run between 8 to 12, between 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. only on weekdays, right? So it keeps my capacity in suspend state during the weekends. And it also checks the capacity status, and it runs, it goes through this side of the condition if it is running. Otherwise, it goes through the other side of the condition. So I looked at the status of my capacity. If it is paused, then suspend it. If it is after 4 p.m., right? So that is exactly what this workflow is doing. If it is after that, it goes to put my capacity on pause, right? So implementing this is not really that complex, but you need to add some expressions in place, and something like some of these conditions are not available out of the box, and you cannot read it from the previous one. So that is what I put in. If you look at the expression, I just put in read a resource, and I just read the status, right? So it just shows up on the hover over. It is body read underscore a resource, and then question mark properties question mark state. That's how I read the status of my capacity. I'm conscious of time. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask. If there isn't any other questions, I'll go ahead with the discard changes. I didn't change anything actually, to the next part, which is scaling Fabric capacity, right? But depending on your situation, you can embed everything into just one Logic Apps workflow. You don't need to create separate Logic Apps to do different things, right? You can embed everything into a single implementation and solution. But what we are doing here is pretty similar. Actual difference is that we are not pausing or suspending, right? We are upscaling and downscaling the capacity. right? The API that is used here is different. It's a different API. But again, let's have a look at the recurrence setting. Again, every hour, and I don't have anything specific on the setting. And on the read, I am then getting my the status of my capacity, because upscaling, downscaling does not work if the capacity is in suspend status and it throws an error message. I don't want that. So I definitely check if the capacity is running, then I go and do my condition. If it is not running, then do nothing. It just does nothing, right? And in here, I'm just looking at the time frame. So I want it to run between 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. and I want to upscale it. And this is the magic that happens over here. These are pretty much the same. You just select your subscription, the resource group that I call my resource group. That's the name of my resource group, Power BI, and then resource provider, and then the SKU that you would like to upscale, and the location of your fabric capacity. Those two are very important. Otherwise, it just doesn't work, right? That is for upscale. And after it is we have done our and it is after 2 p.m. this part will run, and it will just downscale to an F2 capacity.
Hey, so hey, we got like a couple of questions in here. Perhaps like you
Sure.
can just help. But we got like this question from Andrew. Like, so this seems great for when there's no active hours to pause and resume. Does the automatic bursting and smoothing fabric reduce the situations where we need to automate scale up, scale down?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, the auto bursting, it requires more resources, right? And these specific solutions are, I suppose, more for those ones who are not interested in going for reservations, right? So you just really are worried about the costs associated with it, because we are getting charged per second or something, right? So it can get, the bill can get large pretty quick. But autoburst is definitely something worthwhile to look at. But the purpose of this is, if you are strict and maybe you are maybe you have two different capacities. Maybe you have one reservation capacity and you would like to have another capacity for your development, and you do not want it to run after hours. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, we got like a last question. We're also like kind of reaching the time limit in here. So from
Yeah.
Ajmal, so Logic App, I understand. Is this possible like with some .NET app using some custom schedule?
Yeah, of course you can do, because the Logic Apps is actually calling APIs in the background. Definitely, you can do that. Whatever is easier for you. I'm more familiar with Logic Apps. You can do it in Power Automate, or if you are happy to do that in .NET, then so it is. And just remember to share it with the community, right?
Yeah. Just a question for me. Do you have like the source code for this sample?
Yes, of course I do. I actually wrote 2 or 3 different blog posts that I go
Awesome.
through a lot of details, all the expressions that I used, and it is available on my website, which is www.biinsight.com. I just put it in the chat window. You can just jump in and search for Logic Apps. There are a couple of blog posts that I've published lately.
Nice one. Yeah, I know like they were kind of going to the limits. I don't know if you have like anything else to add, Sohail.
I'm good, and thank you very much, everyone, for attending to today's session. I hope you learned something interesting today.